Annyeonghaseyo, Tashidele, Assalamu alaikum, et bon après-midi. Merci infiniment de votre accueil si chaleureux. Thank you for allowing us to experience what is best about Canada. People coming from all different backgrounds, but sharing the same basic values, a belief in freedom and democracy and human rights, and a belief in family, and sharing in the celebration of the Harvest Moon Festival as a kind of extended Canadian family. I think this is a beautiful gesture, and let's make it an annual tradition, don't you? And it's such an inspiration for me to be here with many friends, old and new, all of you in your own ways, champions of human dignity and freedom. And you are an inspiration to me. I have the great privilege of serving Canadians in our Parliament and our national government, and I must say it's a difficult vocation, it's a difficult task, but I'm so greatly encouraged when I meet people such as yourselves who have made unthinkable sacrifices in order to be a voice for the voiceless and a sign of contradiction, as John Paul II, the great Pope, used to say, a sign of contradiction against the abuse of power, against and for human dignity in a world that does not always respect it. Now, each of you represents people who have been victims of persecution, even violence, even death. And each of you either bear the physical or emotional scars of this kind of oppression. And Canada has a proud and noble tradition as a land of protection for the victims of persecution from around the world. It always has been that since our very founding. This year we're celebrating the 200th, we are marking the 200th anniversary of the War of 1812, which was really about American refugees who had fled the Revolutionary War to begin new and safe lives here in Canada. They were actually refugees from political persecution. They came north and 200 years ago defended Canada as a land of protection, which offered its protection in turn to the escaped slaves of coming from the southern United States. Canada, this part of Canada, Upper Canada, became known as the North Star for the Underground Railroad of escaped American black slaves, just as it was a land of protection for my Irish ancestors who fled during the Irish famine, and the people who fled persecution from the Scottish Highlands, and then the Jews who fled the pogroms and persecution in Eastern Europe 100 years ago, and the wave after wave of refugees, the Jewish Holocaust survivors who came to Canada in large number following the Second World War, the victims of communism, the Hungarians in 1956, 60,000 of whom came to Canada after Soviet communist tanks invaded Hungary, the Czechs who came in 1968 after the communist forces suppressed the Prague Spring, and the Vietnamese Indo-Chinese boat people who fled communist oppression from Vietnam in 1979 and 1980. Again, Canada opening its doors to tens of thousands of them. And in fact, since the Second World War, Canada has become home to over 1 million refugees. And today I am proud to tell you, as Canada's Minister for Immigration, we are increasing and enhancing our tradition of refugee protection, increasing by 20% the number of resettled refugees who we welcome to Canada every year, meaning that we will welcome more refugees per capita than any other country in the world, and I think we should all be proud of that, don't you think?
Thank you.
That's why it's the title of Canada is a Home for Exile.
It is a home for exiles, and you make new homes even if you have left loved ones behind. So let me say that it's not enough to be a home for exiles and to be a protection for the persecuted, but it's also important to be a voice for those who continue to be persecuted. You know that, for example, our government is committed to working with many of your communities to construct a national monument to the victims of communism in Ottawa. Some people wanted us to call it to the victims of totalitarian communism. I said, I've never heard of a non-totalitarian form of communism. And so this will be a permanent monument that we will invite every one of the communities here to commemorate the lives of those who have been taken by this brutal form of state oppression, which denies human dignity, private property, freedom, democratic rights. That is one example of how we will remember those who continue to suffer under persecution. Now, in particular, let me say, I'm proud to have belonged to a government that has worked so hard with many of your communities to be a voice for the voiceless, d'avoir travaillé avec la communauté Uygur dans ce sens-là. I remember welcoming to Ottawa and introducing to Prime Minister Harper Rabia Kadir, who is a champion of religious freedom and her people, and to work closely with Mehmet Toti, who's now, I think, in Brussels.
Yeah, he wants me to say hello to you.
And to fight for the release of Hussein Shalil, a Canadian citizen of Uyghur Chinese origin who has been, we believe, unjustly imprisoned without consular access. And as you know, the Prime Minister has raised this repeatedly as an outrageous violation of that Canadian's basic civil rights, human rights. Just as we have worked with the Tibetan community, and most recently welcoming His Holiness the Dalai Lama again to our nation's capital, where I was honored to meet with him, as was the Prime Minister. One of my proudest achievements was to work towards his recognition as an honorary Canadian citizen in 2006, to demonstrate the deep respect that Canadians have. Some people don't like this because they think that this is some sort of interference in one country's affairs. But we believe that the Dalai Lama is a universal symbol of peaceful, nonviolent conflict resolution. And the world needs more voices like that. A man of prayer who is universally respected. And we honor him and the cause for which he has sacrificed so much. And in fact, His Holiness has, I'm speaking too long, but I have so much to say. His Holiness has asked us to help resettle to Canada some of the Tibetan refugees who fled or are living in India in very difficult circumstances and having a difficult time surviving. And so we have announced a special immigration program to welcome some 1,000 initial Tibetans from that part of northern India to begin new lives in Canada. Exiles, yes, but they will be great Canadians, and anything will be possible for them when they get here. And we will continue to work with the community, just as we have done with Falun Gong and Falun Dafa, so many of whose practitioners have come to Canada as exiles, and who are basically a forgotten and marginalized minority, speaking to the most basic value, the freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. And partly the experience that they have gone through has informed our government's decision to create an Office for Religious Freedom, to make, in the words of Prime Minister Harper, the protection of religious freedom and religious minorities a key pillar of Canadian foreign policy. And I'm so proud of the work of my colleague, the Honourable John Baird, in giving expression to that in so many international fora. And I believe that all of the communities represented here will be invited to have ongoing input into the work of the Office for Religious Freedom as it's established. We've also worked very closely with the Korean community and human rights activists who have been giving a voice to those who live in the largest prison camp in the world, in North Korea. And the crimes that are happening there, I think, are beyond our imagination. In particular, thank you for the petition that you presented on behalf of members of the community. I can tell you that you can report back to them already that I have raised directly with Chinese authorities and with the United Nations High Commissioner on Refugees the need to respect the principles of the 1951 Refugee Convention as it relates to North Koreans who have fled into China and other neighboring countries, and to ensure the protection of their basic human dignity and human rights. We will continue to do so. And finally, for those who have fought for so long for human rights and democracy, in China we remember that this is a universal right. This is not something, democracy is not some Western idea that we seek to impose aggressively on other countries. It is a natural right grounded in our human dignity, that we have the right to govern ourselves. And so this is in a way, those of you who come to this country as exiles, as champions of democratic values, are the best Canadians, because you do not take for granted the values upon which this country was built. 120,000 Canadians gave their lives in the defense of our democratic values. And those of you who have come as victims of persecution, as champions of human freedom, do not take that sacrifice lightly. You appreciate it, I think, more than most of us native-born Canadians. And so I close by saying thank you to each and every one of you, to all of your communities, for renewing our appreciation for Canada's founding democratic values, and I wish that you will continue to do so. Now, in closing, I want to make a special recognition of a lady who's been a dear friend of mine for many years, who has helped to bring us together today and in many other times, who has been a selfless and truly brave voice for freedom, and that is our hostess, Sheng Xue. You may know that this year is the, whoops, there I'm hearing myself. This year is the 60th anniversary of the accession to the throne of Canada's head of state, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, whose Diamond Jubilee we're celebrating. And this is an important, she and the monarchy, the crown that she represents, are a key part of the stability and continuity and order of our democratic traditions and the rule of law. And this is a great country, in part because of those institutions that she has represented so selflessly for 60 years. And as a way to recognize her service, we are presenting special Diamond Jubilee medals struck under her authority to some unique Canadians who have made extraordinary contributions to this country. And so on behalf of Her Majesty the Queen and His Excellency the Governor General, I am delighted to present to Sheng Xue this Diamond Jubilee Medal in recognition of her I'm actually going to pin this on you, believe it or not. You were, I don't know if you were expecting this, right?
It's really... It's really a surprise.
And here is the certificate from the Governor General.
Thank you.
Hello. You can wear that every day now.
Watch this way, please. Well, one more.
This way, please.
Thank you.